This is the Pet Buzz. And here's the dynamic pet duo.
So, Professor McDonald, thank you for joining us in the Pet Buzz today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Hey, has there been previous research on this topic, and how is your research different?
There has actually been quite a long track record of work on cat predation of wildlife, most of it leading up to some very grave concerns just about the numbers of animals that cats kill. A little bit about the impacts of how cats can affect wildlife populations, but actually remarkably little about what you might do about it. And that's what's different about this work, is that for people who do let their cats outdoors, we were interested in trying to develop solutions for them that would reduce the risk of their beloved pet killing other people's beloved wildlife.
I think for us, we are big bird watchers. We have cats, we have dogs. Just a few weeks ago, we found a bird in the backyard. So, we were concerned. We also have a lot of feral cats in our neighborhood, as well as neighbors who let out their cats, who are outdoor cats. So we were very curious about this study. So can you talk about the study protocols? How did this come about, and who was involved?
The first thing is that these are all cats that have access to the outdoors. And that's quite different in the UK from other societies like the US, where keeping your cat indoors is much more commonplace. So here it's by far the norm to let your cat outdoors. And setting aside the rights and wrongs of that, we were interested in working with those owners to see what they could do that would benefit their cats, as well as reduce the likelihood of predation of wildlife. So we did a few things. We did some normal stuff, like we looked at whether putting a bell on the collar would help. We also tried an invention from North America called the Birds Be Safe collar, which is actually a collar cover that sits over the existing collar that the cat might wear and makes the cat more visible to birds in particular. And then we tried two new things. One was to feed the cat a meatier diet. So this is whatever they were eating before, we switched their diet to something that had a higher meat content to it. And then the other one was to get the owners to play with their cats for 5 or 10 minutes using a kind of fishing rod toy to get them to chase and capture something that looked and felt like a wild bird. And then we got the owners to record what their cats were doing by way of capturing and bringing home prey over a period of several weeks. We did it before and after the treatment, and we looked to see what results we got. So the first thing was...
Go ahead, Dr.
I was just going to say, so what did your results from the research reveal?
Well, it's pretty remarkable, really, because the food treatment and the play treatment both had an effect on the numbers of wild animals being captured and brought home. So if we looked at birds, for example, which is the thing that people are most worried about, we saw that the food treatment reduced the number of birds brought home by about more than 40%, about 44% on average. For birds as well, the Birds Be Safe collar, not surprisingly, was effective. That reduced killing by about 42%. And for small mammals, the food treatment was reduced killing by about a third, and the play reduced it also by about a third. So it's those two novel findings that by changing what you feed the cat, you could change its behavior, and then playing with the cat, you could change its behavior too. And both of those things are likely appealing to owners. Owners want to see that their cats are well fed. They don't necessarily want their cats to be supplementing their diets with wild food and all the risks that entails. So we feel that these are two positive things for both cats and their owners and the wildlife.
I think most importantly, owners don't want to see birds and rabbits and rats in their house, especially if they're not completely dead. Can you imagine?
Yeah, and I bet you, thinking about the two variables that you mentioned in the study, the playing with and the diet is probably more of a constant thing that you could measure, because people every day going to indicate they're playing 5 or 10 minutes more.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is that whatever the cats were eating to start with, we didn't put them on a standard diet and then switch it. We whatever they were eating before, we switched on to this. So there's an interesting variety in the starting points for a lot of these cats. And then when we switched it, we saw this considerably, this large effect in what they did. Yeah. So the traditional interventions here are things like where you're inhibiting the cat's ability to catch things. So you either put a bell on it so that animals can hear it coming, or you put a color cover on it so that animals can see it coming, or you keep it indoors, whatever you inhibit the cat's ability to catch things. In these two instances, what we're doing is kind of heading the cat off at the pass. We're stopping it before it even intends to go out and start hunting. And I think that's interesting because it's a less invasive way of interacting with your cat. And people are in lots of societies are very concerned about letting their cats express natural behavior. And so in this instance, if you are the sort of owner who lets your cat outdoors, then this is a way of intervening in a positive way to reduce the likelihood of killing.
I think one of the things I was really interested in and reading the research for this study that you did is the ingredients and how cat food plays an important role in terms of reducing the feline hunting. Can you talk a little bit about that in the meatier diet?
Well, I mean, one of the main kind of divisions here in cat foods is whether you have wet and dry, and actually that didn't seem to make much of a difference to our findings. So whatever they were on before, we continued with the same balance of wet and dry foods, and whether it was dry or wet. Made a whole range of different ingredients, and there's a lot of variation between brands and between batches, and the amount of actual meat that's in them, where the protein comes from.
I guess I was saying I was looking at I think one of the research candidates, and I think it was a Laura McDonald maybe, and she said that she changed the cat food, made sure it was a meatier diet, was learning more about ingredients, and that having more meat in the diet didn't seem to affect the cat in the sense where he was less likely to want to go out and catch prey. So, I mean, I thought that was one of the takeaways, because also, I guess when you look at it, continuing to produce meat for dogs and cats, not that I'm opposed to that, has an effect on the environment.
Absolutely. And that's not really kind of our main advocacy here. What we're highlighting is that the way you feed your cat influences its behavior. It seems quite obvious, actually, but we've demonstrated that with this experiment. What we'd like to do next is put our fingers on, pinpoint the attributes of the meatier food that had the effect that we saw. And one possibility is it just has the overall balance of nutrients for these cats that fits the bill. The other possibility is that it's something much more specific, that these cats that hunt have a particularly great need for, and that they're trying to realize that need by going out hunting. So there's an obvious question here. We know that meaty food had the effect of reducing their motivation to go hunting, but we don't know what attribute of the food is. And that would be the next sort of ambition for our research, is to pinpoint the thing that's most important.
So we're talking about diet. Now we can talk about behavior of activity for play, for example. What kind of play? Are there some predator games that can be substituted instead of capturing the bird?
Yeah, so the thing that we tried was we had like a fishing rod with a line up the end of it and a sort of crinkly feather toy at the end. And you play with the cat until the cat chases that and pounces on it. And then we got the owners to switch the sort of fishing toy for a mouse toy that was crinkly again. And then the cat had the opportunity then to go through the second post-capture stage of manipulating the cat and kicking it and biting it, so that they kind of got both elements of the hunt sequence. And we only asked the owners to do that for 5 or 10 minutes a day. So it wasn't a huge commitment for them.
Right. And the other thing that I always find really interesting with our cat Hayden, I always find that I spend a little bit more time if I'm talking on the phone in the evening. I use a fishing pole toy, or anything that can bring out that predatory behavior, whether it's throwing, like a little mouse, a furry mouse, or a crinkle toy. But one thing I found that was really interesting is I think some of the research, some of the articles I had read talked about the puzzle toys. And we know that dogs, trainers and behaviorists think puzzle toys are a great thing for dogs. It keeps them thinking, it keeps them motivated, especially dogs that like to chomp down their food. And I know some feline behaviorists like puzzle toys for cats. So I guess I had read somewhere that the puzzle toys, I guess, in addition to your study or regarding your study, really kind of enhance that predatory behavior. Is that correct? Or
Yeah, that's one of the other surprising outcomes from this study is that we tried presenting the existing food in a puzzle feeder, and that actually had the opposite from the desired effect. And we saw that that increased the numbers of animals that they were bringing home. So that's not an avenue that we're going to explore any further. But we weren't quite sure what the interpretation of that was, other than perhaps that it had been introduced rather more rapidly than would be advised, or that the cats were, or that these particular cats were frustrated and went out, were hungry, and knew where to get the replacement food. But yeah, you're right. In general terms, particularly for indoor cats, then puzzle feeders are part of a behavioral enrichment that a lot of behaviorists do advise. It's just in this context, the benefits to the cat are not extended to the wildlife.
So for our listening cat owners who are perplexed about watching the little one bring in a little bird or another little prey, well, can you summarize what you think is best for them to do to maybe reduce that opportunity for their little loved
that
one?
instinct?
Yeah, to go out and get them.
Well, ultimately, the only way of really preventing your cat from killing wildlife or interacting with wildlife in risky ways to keep it indoors, and that's the mainstay of the advice that a lot of conservationists in the US in particular have, that keep your cat indoors is the best way to protect wildlife. If, on the other hand, you are keen that your cat has an outdoor life and don't want to countenance keeping it indoors, then certainly looking at a meat-rich diet is one option. If that's something that you can't afford, then certainly playing with your cat frequently does seem to have a similar effect, order of magnitude. And that's part of something that we should be doing as owners in engaging and enriching the lives of our cats in any case. So certainly both of those things are something that we would advocate. If your cat does wear a collar when it's outdoors, it's used to that, and you're happy with it wearing a collar, then the Birds Be Safe collar cover is also a great device and is very effective in reducing the numbers of birds killed by cats that are allowed outdoors. But once again, I mean, it differs very much between societies, and in the UK, allowing your cat outdoors is part of the norm. In the US, where your listeners are, the norm is to keep your cat indoors, and that's the best way to protect wildlife.
Sure.
That's great.
I mean, really interesting. I think we've got to get check out that Bird Be Safe collar, because I think that would be really interesting, and maybe talk about that in the I Like You of the week, because I think people would like to see it and see how much it is. And I think anything you do, I mean, the great thing is play is cheap. It's free. It's something that you do. It's just a few minutes of your time, whether it's 5 minutes once a day or twice a day. I mean, and then also, I mean, just providing your pet with a quality diet. But you know what? That's why manufacturers invented coupons. Right? And we have coupons here in the US, and depending on where you are, right?
Well, also just that relationship between the cat owner and the cat would be accentuated if they're spending more time. And I think that would be more rewarding for them.
Absolutely. Good point.
Well, it works well with the kids too. And, one of the things that we saw was that the play had more of an effect on mammals than it did on birds. And one of my suspicions there is that actually people are playing with the cat when the kids come home from school. So they're kind of getting that behavioral stimulation before the evening, and that reduces their instinct to go out and kill mammals.
Very interesting.
So get the kids to do it.
Get the kids to it. And also, I think it's a great time. I mean, growing up, we had Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. You got to, and shows like that when I was growing up, you're much older than I am, of course. But I mean, growing up, you started to learn about instincts, behavior, the difference between mammals, the difference between species. And part of those shows was really highlighting, and a lot of these natural shows, predatory and hunting behavior. So if you're going to play with your cat, get something to get him moving, get him up, get him bat him, get him pouncing, which are mimicking those behaviors he used when he's hunting.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
So wrap it up, Dr.
Well,
Fleck.
Professor McDonald, thank you for sharing your research with us today. It really is very insightful, and I'm sure our cat owners are really listening to this. And I can tell you, for us personally, it really does apply. We're going to try it on our cat, Hayden.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to work.
All right.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Pet Buzz.